What's going on, guys? Hey, man, we're back and we've got a different kind of video. We're going to talk about what I believe is happening, or I guess my perspective on what is actually happening in the world right now. I believe we are living the beginning stages of World War III. And I'm not a fear monger. I don't want people to be like, oh, you're making people panic, or this is just clickbait, blah, blah, blah. No, I genuinely believe this. And if you've been following the channel for a while, you know this as well. I've actually been saying this for over since uh, the North Koreans came into Russia and were helping Russia fight Ukraine. Which was about a year ago, over a year ago. So we're gonna talk about this, man. Get ready, get your typing fingers ready to get in the comments and start scrapping or talking, because I want to hear everybody's opinion, man. So first off, let me introduce myself and then we'll jump into it. My name is Saxon. I go by Vegas here in Ukraine. Before I came to Ukraine, I was a firefighter and an EMT outside of Fort Worth, Texas, in a small town in a volunteer fire department called Dave Cordova FD. I did that for about 3 years. The last year is when I was getting my EMT license. Once I got my EMT license, I came to Ukraine, tried to volunteer in a hospital or some kind of search and rescue team or something, because that's where all my experience was, my training was. Anyways, long story short, it was January of 2023, so it was still pretty early on. There wasn't much infrastructure built around foreigners volunteering. There was really the International Legion, or you had to know somebody in some kind of a volunteer group. So I went to the International Legion. I was a combat medic there. We deployed to Kupiansk in March of 2027, where I was in a trench line, did multiple combat operations with 1st Battalion, Charlie Company, 3rd Platoon, and then some bad stuff happened and lost some buddies. Our commander took a grenade to the neck, and we didn't know if it was friendly or enemy. Long story, but it led to me leaving the Legion and going back home, selling all my stuff in Texas, grabbing my cats, coming back to Ukraine, and helping start Azov's International Battalion, the first international group within the Azov 12th Brigade. And I deployed with their first group, and I was a combat medic on one of the assault teams and did multiple combat operations with them. Now I am still in Ukraine. Not in a combat position or anything like that. I'm not currently serving. Doing some other stuff kind of behind the scenes, and I'll be able to talk more about that in the coming days as well. But also, I'm doing this. I'm talking with you guys. I'm trying to bring awareness to what's happening here in Ukraine and really globally now because of what's happening. So let's talk about why I make this crazy claim. We're in World War III, and just for the record, when people used to say stuff like this, oh, it's World War III. If this happens, it's World War III. We don't want to start World War III. I used to be like, shut the f up, dude. Like, you're being dramatic. You're being dramatic. It's not going to happen. Blah blah blah. I've been in Ukraine for over 3 years at this point, and I've had my pulse on global events, specifically conflicts and wars happening, very closely, right? Especially here in the Ukraine-Russia war, but also on other conflicts happening around the world. So, sorry, nicotine reload. So I'm going to be clear about something. In today's world, people don't declare war necessarily. I don't know if you've noticed this or not, but even the most significant war that's happened in decades, which is what's happening here in Ukraine, even when this kicked off, they didn't call it a war. Putin called it a special military operation. When the U.S. attacked Iran, it was also, they were calling it something different, and it actually took a while for them to even admit that it was a war, the administration, and then they're still weird about it. You'll have Marco Rubio say, "Oh, it's a war," and then Pete Hegseth will be like, "Well, this conflict," and then Trump will switch back and forth between war and conflict. Nobody likes the word war, and with that said, nobody's declaring war anymore. This isn't like after 9/11 when we went and we declared war, or it's not like when Pearl Harbor happened and the US was like, we declare war against Japan, right? It doesn't work that way anymore. Oftentimes, the wars are fought, these shadow wars are fought, which we've learned a lot on this channel, especially watching channels like Preston Stewart and Cappy Army, and they do really good breakdowns about kind of the behind the scenes in a lot of these wars. Um, these shadow wars are kind of always taking place between like espionage, spy, cloak and dagger type stuff. Aside from that, the the fallout and consequences of any government or nation declaring a war, there's too much fallout that could come from that, right? So everybody calls it something else while in reality they're still just doing war stuff. So we're not going to come to a point where all of a sudden, on big magazines and posters and billboard in Times Square, it's going to be like U.S. and World War III. Officially, World War III has started. And I think that's kind of what a lot of people expect, even though it sounds silly, but right, everybody is thinking there's got to be something big that kicks off, right? There's got to be something that starts this. And I think that is a really big misconception. Again, because, and we're gonna break this down into a few different parts, and I'll explain it. I believe technically, when Russia invaded Ukraine, would be the start of World War III, and I think in history books that will be considered. February 22nd, 2022 will be the start of World War III, or at least the beginning stages of it. But aside from that, because it was technically just Ukraine, just Russia, even though Ukraine was getting a lot of backing from Western allies and Russia was getting backing from their allies. There were still only Ukrainian boots on the ground and Russian boots on the ground, known boots on the ground. I'm not talking about secret, secret black ops type stuff. We're not talking about that in this video. Specifically, just kind of what's well known, what the public sees. So, fast forward, we ended up seeing North Korea's president Kim Jong Un, or Supreme Leader Kim Jong Un, send, the numbers are still shady. I see anywhere from 12,000 to 30,000 North Korean special forces to Russia to help behind the lines with logistics and supplies and stuff like that. But in reality, they were mostly infantry units, infantry soldiers that were sent to Kursk to help Russia gain their Kursk territory back and help fight against the Ukrainians. There are actually, out of all of the North Koreans that were in Russia that were fighting against Ukraine, only two have been captured alive. Multiple were captured, but they had um, specific orders that they needed to off themselves before they were captured. And we've seen videos of this where they yell out, the North Korean will yell out Kim Jong Un's name, pull up the pin on a frag, and just hold it next to their head, man. So, anyways, my point is this scenario, this situation, I believe, was the official start of World War III. We have another country's boots on the ground in an official capacity, right? In a public, well known, well documented, well seen capacity. North Koreans and Russians are fighting against Ukrainians. That was the start. Okay, so this was all kind of this was all revolving around the Ukraine Russia war sphere. Okay, so this was the first part. We might come back to it, but the first part is really what I believe was the catalyst, the beginning, which is the war in Ukraine, the war between Russia and Ukraine. Okay, now we fast forward some time and we have what's happening in the Middle East. The Middle East has always kind of been a powder keg, ready to ignite, but everybody kind of tried to keep their hands out of it more or less and let Israel and whatever terror proxy at the time kind of scrap it out. And the US would help Israel and Iran would help these terror proxies, okay? But it's escalated far more than that in ever in recent months, right? So we are in a full-scale war against Iran. By we, I mean the United States is in a full-scale war against Iran. Iran, excuse me, is getting supplies from Russia and China knowingly. And actually, just today, if I can find the headline, I'll put it right here. There are it was announced that China was sending a bunch of rockets or missile systems or man pads, something similar to this, um, publicly sending them to Iran. But you could say, hey, this is still, they're just allies. They're just sending them equipment, the same as the U.S. has helped supply, and the EU has helped supply to Ukraine. Okay, they're just allies helping Iran. What Iran has done is basically when the pressure was put on them by the United States, they decided to hold the Strait of Hormuz hostage and also try to basically hold the oil and gas economy hostage by launching missiles and drones into their what used to be friendly neighboring countries, Saudi Arabia, the UAE, Qatar, Jordan, and are trying to not only hit military personnel that are in some of these locations, but also the oil infrastructure, the gas and oil infrastructure, energy infrastructure that are in places like the UAE and Saudi Arabia. And yesterday, it was announced that Saudi Arabia and the United States were doing joint missions, collaborating together and acting together, physically working together and attacking together Iran. So that puts the United States, Saudi Arabia, and Israel actively in this war against Iran. So that's the second major escalation, major point. There's three main points that I kind of wanted to get to here. So this is the second one, the Middle East. First was Russia, Ukraine. Second was the Middle East. And then what happened is Ukraine's drone technology and drone understanding has skyrocketed, right? Exponentially increased from the beginning of the war to the point where they are able to effectively strike targets at medium to long range now. So they, just a few days ago, Ukraine was able to hit Iranian cargo ships that were supplying Russia with drones and drone parts. So we just built a bridge between part one, Ukraine Russia war, a bridge to part two, the Middle East war. Boom, boom. Now let's talk part three. Part three is China. China is the China is the sleeping giant, if you will. They are the sleeping bear trying to that's doing stuff behind the scenes, helping and aiding enemies of the free world without getting their hands too dirty. And we won't even get into everything that they do south of the United States border in regards to supplying cartels and gangs in South America with the chemicals and drugs that they need to produce fentanyl and methamphetamine, stuff like that, that go into the United States and kill actually hundreds of thousands of Americans. We won't even get into that aspect because that's more of that cloak and dagger espionage kind of stuff, right? We're talking about mostly the in your face, very public view. Um, everybody can what everybody can see, what's in the news every day, right? So part three is China. Now, Taiwan and China. This is where it's kind of starting, right? Let's put all of the shady stuff that China has done in the European nations and in the US aside. Let's talk specifically about China and their relationship with Taiwan. China believes Taiwan is rightfully theirs, kind of like Russia believes Ukraine is rightfully theirs because at one point they were combined, right? Aside from this, Taiwan currently produces 90% of the most advanced microchips in the world that run and are needed in the most advanced technology in the world. 90%. Under that, it's like 70%, and I'll get the exact statistics right here. 70% of like the middle tier microchips that are needed for day-to-day living, and then 50% of the smaller microchips that are less needed. You know what I mean? So they have an absolute corner of this microchip market that is critical for developing nations. Also critical to having more advanced militaries than your adversaries. Okay. So that is, in my opinion, and other other people's opinions, the main reason China is trying to take Taiwan. Now, in recent months, we've seen China doing these military drills, military trainings, basically off the coast of Taiwan, to where they're just moving their ships and their navy into these perfect positions around Taiwan, but in the name of training, kind of like when Vladimir Putin was moving all of his troops and assets, or not all of them, but moving the military towards the border of Ukraine, north and east, and the navy up the Black Sea in the name of training and training operations, right? And then all of a sudden, boom! Now there's tanks trying to drive into Kiev. We're seeing a very similar pattern with China and Taiwan. Not to mention all of the intelligence that's been found that China is very much serious and planning to take Taiwan. It's also been regarded and spoken about that, I'll say, people who know much more than I do believe that 2027 will be the year that the United States enters a war with China. I don't know exactly what that's based off of. Probably a whole lot of things, but I find that interesting. So we've got let's recap. We've got step one, the start, the catalyst of it all, Russia, Ukraine. Step two, the Middle East. Powder keg has officially ignited and exploded. There is full war in the Middle East. There are multiple countries fighting Iran, multiple terror proxies fighting other countries in the area. And then third step, which hasn't technically kicked off yet, is China invading Taiwan. Okay, now these are the big three, and we can in a longer video another time, or you can watch other people's videos or whatever it is. There's so many ties between all three of these steps already. Russia and their allegiance and alliance with China, and China's allegiance and reliance. Yeah. So Russia's sorry guys, Russia's reliance on China, now that their economy's been hit so hard with because of things like tariffs, sanctions over the past 5 years of this war, not to mention Ukraine absolutely decimating their oil infrastructure. Russia is damn near a vassal state to China at this point. China is Russia's main lifeline. But Russia is still getting a lot of supplies and a lot of help from Iran and North Korea, and vice versa. Iran still getting a lot of help from Russia and China. So what we're seeing happen is the enemies, what I consider to be the axis of evil, the enemies of the free world, Iran, China, Russia, and North Korea, right? These nations are being secluded and singled out by the rest of the free world via sanctions and military action and tariffs, stuff like that. So it's forcing this axis of evil to grow closer to each other, to rely more on each other because they need to. So they're building stronger and stronger bonds, while what I consider to be the West, the free world, European nations, the USA, are also in some capacity growing closer together to collaborate and work against these enemies. Everything, if you haven't started putting it together while I've been speaking over this, last 20 minutes, all of this that I'm saying is the bingo card. We're just checking boxes on the World War III bingo card, man. And we have almost checked all the boxes. We have an Axis force. We have an allied force. We have very strong bonds. We have difference of religious, ideological, religious, political viewpoints and perspectives that will never come together. They won't. The idea that somehow Vladimir Putin of Russia is going to come to the table to negotiate any kind of peace agreement with Ukraine is absurd. That needs to be removed from people's minds. The only reason it's even discussed in the news is to protect any kind of financial interests, right? There is no way Vladimir Putin, one of, if not the number one terrorist in the entire world, is going to concede anything to Ukraine. Okay? Let's move over to Iran. The United States annihilated the supreme leader, Ayatollah, right? And then mangled his son, who's now technically in control, but they don't know who's in control. Is it the IRGC? Is it the president? Is it, mangled his son, killed a ton of leadership. The Iranians, the IRGC specifically, will never come to the negotiation table in a meaningful way with any good intentions. Ever. There is such a hard line drawn in the sand between Ukraine and Russia, between the IRGC and the West. So there is, what we're seeing right now is this climb in volatility and this climb in this escalation in military operations, and everything's going up, and the chances of any kind of meaningful negotiation, in my opinion, are zero. But if we're going to put like a trend line on it, it's going down. The more things escalate, the more the chances of negotiation go down. And more countries are getting involved. Last night, for the very first time, Egypt was hit by the IRGC. Now Egypt's in the mix of this, right? More and more escalation, more and more tension, more and more combat. In my opinion, this is a long time coming, right? Again, none of this is to scare anybody. While the concept and prospect of World War III is a scary idea, that's not the purpose of this video. The purpose of this video is to bring awareness, I suppose, and show people that even though the media tries to play this like level head, this really calm, cool, collected, like, well, negotiations are on their way, and then the leadership of the IRGC and the delegates from Russia and China, and they're all talking, and bullshit. Do not believe that, guys. It's anything like that, like I said, that is pushed through mainstream media is for financial reasons, to lock down financial assets, to calm the nerves of these billionaire or $1 billion, $1 trillion companies. That's my take, guys. That was a lot, and it might have kind of felt like a ramble, and maybe it was a little bit, but believe it or not, I did take a lot of notes and went over and researched and studied my stuff. You could question my opinions, but the facts are facts, right? If I'm going to bring something up, I try to make it as factual as possible, and then also tell people if I'm sharing an opinion, that it's my opinion, right? But everything that's happening right now there's a very clear pattern, and without mainstream media kind of trying to smooth things over, pretend like everything's all right, most people in the world would see this pattern. It's a very obvious pattern, but media is doing their best to try to cover it up and hack it up and make it seem like, oh no, actually that's not the pattern. I thought I saw a pattern, but no, because Fox News said this, or CNN said this, or ABC said this, or Russia Channel 1 said this, or it's going down, man. It's going down. Let me know what you guys think in the comments. I know for a fact, because of our Discord, because of how much I talk with viewers regularly, there's a lot of you guys that are also on the same page that I am, that see these trends and whatnot. But I know there's at least a percentage of people that don't believe what I'm saying, and they don't think that all of this escalation, it will lead to anything, and eventually things will just calm down. So let me know what you guys think in the comments. I hope this was of any value to you guys. Please let me know as well if this is something that you'd like to watch. Anyways, I love you guys. I will shut up and let you go. We'll see you in the next video.